take a look right here. It's a beautiful day. This is our 4-camera view that we like to use, and every one of those looking great. Sunshine, blue skies from Monroe to the Speedway to Dallas to also in Monroe. Speaking of Monroe, yesterday, Chris, we were standing right here in the Weather Center talking about the potential for some strong storms and maybe tornadoes. And as we were on the air, we did have that tornado developed.
Yeah, it was actually right about this time that we saw that there was a shift in the line. So that's a little QLCS, there's a little bend in it, and then before you know it, this is what you see. And Larry, we saw that the path length was 2.2 miles. And if you notice the top of that, it was on the ground for 3 minutes from 8:34 to 8:37. So that's a really small time. So it was nearly moving a mile a minute. The estimated speed, I think when we were tracking this tornado warning, was 45 miles per hour, but an EF1 to say the least.
Yeah, and we're watching it, and it may have, no, we're not confirmed that it developed near Porter Ridge High School and then moved over to Lawyers Road, and that's where it did all the damage. So, yeah, max width was about 75 yards. You know, the average tornado somewhere from about 75 to 140 yards in width, but only on the ground for 2.2 miles, and that's the good thing. It did damage, but it could have done a lot more.
And this is how most of our tornadoes form. They happen fast, usually with a kink along the line, but they're short-lived. So all these boxes were checked from yesterday's event, and we were also looking at some of the power lines. And I think really what happened here is a couple were brought down as kind of a dominoes effect. But whenever you have these estimations for the degree of damage, it can be much higher. It can be the white expected. But we did see some broken tops. There were some poles leaning, and I think some of the broken poles might have been broken by even the own weight of everything coming down.
Can I ask you about this right here? This graphic right here. Where does this come from?
So this comes directly from the National Weather Service. So when the tornado surveyors go out to decide if it's going to be EF0 to EF5, they go through different levels. So literally, I think it goes 1 through 30. So number 24 is electrical transmission lines, and it technically goes up to 6. Once you're 6, you're talking about metal electrical lines that would be damaged from like an EF4, EF5. So that's where all this comes from.
So they have specific guidelines they use in determining the power of a tornado.
And that's the key here, because we talked about this yesterday, that an EF scale is, yes, we measure winds, but it's a damage scale. So that's what they do, is they assess the damage where they try to pin the winds in between that. And we saw that there was really just the power lines was the biggest deal. We also are going to hear from Richard here coming up that there was a structure that was completely destroyed, but the damage wasn't really widespread.
And
so that's
no
why it was lower end.
injuries. It's so thankful because, you know, when you think about where it was, Porter Ridge High School, there were kids there. I mean, it's not that it's a big population, but there are a lot of houses in that area.
Yeah, no, and you think our lucky stars, because a lot of times it can happen in the middle of nowhere. We had our first tornado warning in Chester County, where barely anyone really lives in that populace. And we saw it. It was a mean line, and this is definitely, I think, the biggest signature that we saw, at least across our area.
That was the one that was confirmed. I'm not sure if the National Weather Service from Columbia is going to examine the one in Chester.
I don't think so.
I don't think so there. Now in Columbia, there were warnings in Columbia. Now down there, that may have been a couple confirmed. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't see the exact damage from that, but at one point, the Columbia National Weather Service actually went into their safe place.
Yes, they did.
Because
it was right there.
Moving right overhead.
Right there at the airport.
Because granted, within the tornado warning, sometimes like it might be extended a little bit wider. For them, they knew, oh wow, this is moving directly over us. But let's check out some of the damage. Another thing is they usually assess is the trees that fall. So here's a significant tree that fell, and yeah, look at that one, just kind of came out from its roots. That might also be the health of the tree is also a status here too.
That does look like an older tree.
Yeah.
And then the power lines that went down. Now this is over off Lawyers Road in Union County, near 601. A lot of damage there, and that right there. That was a tin peeled off the roof in that one specific area right there.
And for that degree of damage that we went through, that's about a 70-mile-per-hour wind that typically does that. So it was really, I think, at certain spots had EF0, other ones had EF1. So
Richard Devane is out there on the scene at the moment, and you know, looking at some of the damage, Richard.
Looking right there.
Yeah, guys, absolutely phenomenal when you talk about the amount of damage. And then, Larry, as you mentioned, right over there is Porter Ridge High School. just 600 yards away. I always use Ruben because he knows football fields, former football players. He knows how many yards away that is. There were folks over there at the time, just a little bit more than 24 hours ago. There were folks there, as you can see, at the high school, but fortunately they weren't hit. But this outhouse, I should say, just look at it, the wind blowing through this. And as you continue to look we're on the Simpsons property right here. And basically Chris Simpson allowed us to shoot, but you can see the house next to it, which is under construction. But some of the shards of metal from sheets of metal from this house blown all the way into trees over there. We actually saw trees uprooted and everything. Yeah, the storm absolutely wreaked havoc near Friendly Baptist Church Road where we are and Ridge Road, damaging multiple structures. Trees and power lines were down near the Porter Ridge High School. Crews spent the day working to get that power restored, thankfully. There were left a lot of folks in the darkness because of losing their power. In the wake of all this destruction, the winds reached, we're told, 90 miles per hour when it touched down. We heard from the National Weather Service and also the person who lives at this house. Here's what both of them had to say.
It looks like the tornado touched down at approximately 8:34 a.m. Again, this is all preliminary data, and as we go back and we continue to evaluate, these may adjust by a minute or two here or there, but this was a very fast-moving storm, moving at about 50 miles an hour, so it was really only on the ground for about 3 minutes. So it looks like it lifted at about 8:37 a.m.
I did hear a lot of wind and I heard a lot of rain. A little discouraging because it's a building that's been Dad built years and years and years ago. It's got a lot of family memories in it, so some of those things may be salvageable, they may not be.
Yeah, but the great news in all of this, as you guys have talked about this morning, the fact that there was no loss of life. We're actually just behind Mr. Simpson's house here. This is about, I'd say, 150 yards from his house. And that's one of the amazing things. Whenever you see something like that, you can look at one path of destruction and then some place that hasn't been touched at all. But again, the great news, no one loss of life in this incident. We're right here in Union County. This is Rich Devane, guys.
It's amazing what you can see now in the daylight.
Yeah.
When we first talked to you at 5 this morning, we didn't have a full appreciation for what was behind you, and now seeing that like that, you get an idea of some of the damage. It was, and that close to the schools as well. Wow. All right, Richard, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.